Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a special edition of our inter-university show. Today, we'll be engaging very bright minds to address pressing questions of our time. Today's episode comes at a defining moment, of course, after we've just recently celebrated 30 years of the Ugandan Constitution. We also reflect on a powerful and provocative question, the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961. Uganda's unending quest for free, fair, and credible elections. From the hopeful days of independence to the tense elections of the 2000s and beyond, Uganda's electoral journey is a mix of ambition, controversy, and calls for reform. But how far have we come, and where do we go from here? My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. I'm your host. With us today are the finest brains from Nkumba University Hope Initiative Club. They are representatives that are going to participate in the inter-university interface coming on 30th and 31st October. And I know that we'll be having two other participants join the call later on, but on the call right now, we have Onizimai Ronald. Onizimai, please introduce yourself to our audience and say hello to us.
Oh, thank you so much. As you rightly pronounced even the botanical name, my name is Ronald Onizimai. I'm a student of Nkumba University, and I'm a student of public health. Yes, I'm glad to be on this platform, especially for this particular engagement this afternoon. I'm glad it's been a while having participated in CCG activities way back in 2016 and 17. Again, I'm back.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we have Kkama Cinderella. Kkama Cinderella. I hope I pronounced that right. Cinderella, thank you so much for joining us. Please say hello to the audience.
Good afternoon. I'm Kkama Cinderella from Nkumba University. I'm a student of law, and I'm honored to be part of this session. Pardon my voice, I'm a bit sick, but...
Yes, thank you so much. So we're going to begin the conversation immediately with Onizimai. You pronounced it a different way, and I thought I got it right, but Onizimai, please, we will begin the discussion with you. Looking back at Uganda's first elections in 1961 and comparing them with the elections that we had recently in 2021, what trends stand out in terms of credibility and transparency?
Thank you so much. If we look at the 1961 elections that took place way back and that actually brought Uganda to independence, comparing it with the one we had recently in 2021, I would begin by saying I see less difference. However, the less difference counts. I would count a better side on the 1961 elections as compared to the one of today. If you look at the 1961 elections, the 1961 elections were at least, if we compare it in terms of the atmosphere, even if some of us were not born, when history tells us that it was at least better if we compare it with the one of today, because there was reality. What is ideal, prevailed at least at that time. And it led Uganda to at least the day that we celebrate annually in October. Now, if we look at the elections of 1961, there was no militarization of any democratic process. Everyone was eager and wanted to really, was looking forward to the outcome of the entire process, because Uganda needed independence at that time, and people were genuine at that time. All those who started the journey from Mengo up to Kololo Independence Grounds, the processes that surrounded the elections were at least fair. It was conducted in a fair atmosphere, because even at that time, Uganda had not wasted enough resources to invest in procurement of sophisticated weapons, much as at that time there were no wars yet. Unlike of today, that we all know in Uganda, the chunks of money that were spent on recruitment of military personnel, and it is something which is routine, by the way, in Uganda, not just 2021, but even in 2016. There is need to recruit more police, there is need to recruit more army, and it is one of these days, it is so funny that it is the recruitment is in the UPDF, it's done in most cases in the names of LDU, whereas we are not under threat of any war. Okay, if that is not the case, why would the recruitments take place at the eve of elections? That is, as a citizen, that is what questions really my mind. Now, when we look at the recently concluded elections, I call it recently because 2021 is never far away from 2025, just 4 years down the road. I happen to witness the heavy deployments that I would consider unnecessary in any democratic process, because democratic process that involves, I think the requirements there were paper and a pen. That is what we use on the papers for the ballots and the pens for ticking. Now, why would I see guns surround Ugandans? Why would I see threatening weapons? Like you see heavy and sophisticated military weapons surrounding the electoral place, and which did not exist in 1961. At least political parties were able to compete on level grounds, unlike of today. You might be, for example, today, you would be an opposition. Initially, you didn't have protection, but one of these days, you are offered a forceful protection, and you are offered a forceful, a convoy to guard you. Ideally not to guard you, but to regulate your movement. In 1961, those regulations were not, such unnecessary regulations were not there. Intimidating uniforms were not there. Weapons were not at least seen. At least somewhere they were seen, but not in all parts of the country. But this time round,
allow me to interject a little bit.
Yes, please.
You say that the elections were far too different. I mean, the trend in 1961 as opposed to just the most concluded elections were a bit different because of the army. What other trends do you recognize from the two elections, aside from the presence or the lack of presence of the army in the electoral process?
I see genuineness in the 1961 elections, and there was no use of money. Our recently concluded elections, has been almost spoiled, given the fact that Ugandans are in a bad economic situation. So political parties found it easier to manipulate the citizens using money to do whatever they want. However, we cannot conclude that their decisions were largely influenced by money, but money has been used to interrupt the whole process. Money has been used to bribe voters. Money has been used to convince political partisans, especially candidates on the other side, to cross to the other side. Especially there are political parties which are economically superior and have, especially, for example, access to a lot of money resources. Unlike even the other political parties, I would talk of the opposition, whose even financial accesses were restricted. NGOs were being thoroughly checked in 2021 to see if they are not funding these political parties, and some of them were even censored, by the way. NGOs had to be closed down. Bank accounts of political candidates on the other side had to be thoroughly checked. Where are you getting your money from? Where did you get all this? The expectation of other political parties is that other political parties should not be in position to fulfill their objectives and fulfill their to meet their political campaign trails. However, if we look at 1961, you can bear witness with me, which political party was able to manipulate any electoral process with money? Which electoral commission was bribed? Which political party was bought and then shifted to the other one wholesomely, unlike of today? So such irregularities, the current irregularities were not there in 1961, money-wise, military-wise, and economically.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for your thoughtful submission. Now, I would like to invite Cinderella to the conversation, of course, because we've had your take on the difference between the 1961 elections and the recently concluded elections. Cinderella, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. So, hold on. Cinderella, I would like to invite you to talk about elections under the 1995 Constitution. Do you believe that now, 30 years after the promulgation of the 1995 Constitution, it has delivered on its promise of guaranteeing free and fair elections, or it's a promise unfulfilled? I know for sure that the NRA went to the bush because of the unfair results of the 1980 elections. So do you believe that elections under the 1995 Constitution have been free and fair?
Because I'm going to start from the beginning. Starting from the independence, first elections, which were like around 1962, we had among our first political parties was still Milton Obote and Kabaka. And remember those ones, People's Congress. I'm not going to get deep into it, but if we recall, I'm a law student, so most times I use cases. For example, we have a case. It is Progressive Injira and others versus Uganda. It was also a case that talked about interference for election petitions. This indicates that we have been having interruptions and interferences with elections since the beginning of time. The only difference we have experienced with time is that as time has come and we have experienced evolution with our communities. Comparing 62 to now, we have more literate people, more exposed people, more educated people, more literate people who are able to comprehend what politics is about, what our constitution is about. We have more people who know that we actually have a constitution. By then, I don't think people knew what politics was entailing. Most people knew politics was more or less a leader governing a country. So by then, of course, we were going to have limited contributions to the interference with elections. And with time, it increases due to the fact that when the monetary value coming from the parliament increases, the more demand for those positions increasing. We have people who are going to parliament not because they want to do something different, or they want to bring change, or they want to be leaders. Many of them are going there because the paycheck is fat. Most of them are going there, income is reasonable. Many of them are in there and are not well conversant with what they are doing. Many of them are there and don't even know what their actual responsibilities are. So with time, we are experiencing these changes where the governments are getting more easier to manipulate because the people are putting themselves in positions where it's about materialism. What do I get? My colleague had talked about the increase in military participation in the political scene. When it comes to elections, there's an increased deployment in the military force. When they're coming towards elections, there is higher increase in recruitment. I feel like this is due to the increase in the situations that surround elections. By then, people would vote, go home. Some people didn't vote. We had a very low population that took part in these elections. But with now, even before elections begin, when elections are a week away, commotion has started, people are losing lives. So we find ourselves in a position where many of the things we disregard might be relevant. But when we are talking about the evolution, many of the things are just repetition of our history because we don't really read much about our history. Many people don't know about our history, so we find ourselves repeating it continuously. We are right now.
Thank you very much, Cinderella. I do have a follow-up question. You know, many of the concerns that you have raised are very much connected with the credibility and how it is affected. And we know that there is an institution that is in charge of organizing elections under the 1995 Constitution. So let us talk about the Independent Electoral Commission. Do you believe that the Electoral Commission operates independently? Is it too politically aligned to, or do you believe it's too politically aligned to deliver credible elections? If so, what should be done when state institutions, including the Electoral Commission and the army, are accused of interfering with elections?
I do believe that many of these organs are independent on their own, but the problem is the institution in itself being independent does not take away the regard by which its leaders may have loyalty to different political parties, which means that it's very difficult to find an individual who may be non-biased, which means we cannot control whether or not we have people who are going to put themselves in positions to be involved. But with interference, it has been there, but I feel like, especially when it comes to the military, I do feel like, minus the fact that we have been having poor management in the military aspect of interference, because many people lose lives and their handling of the situation is not really quite on point. But other than that, we have a really high need for the military interferences. But we also have limitations to where these interferences come, because we have the need for protection and security around the ballots and the election processes and people conducting these things. But that also brings about a challenge in which these people get access, in which it gives them room to do anything that comes with interference. If we find it is easier for them to manipulate ballots, or to, as we can call it, cheating votes. So it is something where it has both a negative and positive impact. Same with the Electoral Commission. We have the positive impact in which its independence is necessary because it limits the bias. But then we also have the challenge in which, yes, an institution can be independent, but we cannot control in which direction the leaders of these communities are going to go.
Allow me interject. When the leaders of these institutions have conflict of interest, wouldn't you say that that qualifies as a lack of independence on their part?
On their part, I do believe it might contribute to that, but the only challenge we shall face as a people is it is very difficult for someone to acknowledge commitment to a particular party. When it comes to Electoral Commission,
Cinderella,
a situation to be
it appears
non-biased.
that we are losing you. It appears that we are losing you. Can we have you in a place that is a little bit stable, because you're breaking?
Oh, are you okay now?
Yes, you're okay. Can you speak a little bit from where you stopped, especially after the question?
All right. I was talking about the contribution, of Electoral Commission when it comes to non-bias. As a leader chairperson Electoral Commission, it would be unexpected of you to have the non-bias. But the difficulty we have is that due to the procedural process that has been given, or that has been provided for in the Constitution, the 1990 Constitution, the chairperson Electoral Commission is appointed by the president, whereby we are going to meet a challenge in which, if our president is a running member or a running contestant, we are going to have difficulty in which a situation arises whereby he is always going to make a choice in favor of who is in his line of sight, or who he feels is in favor of what he expects. But the problem will be that if that happens, then we are going to find a challenge in the loyalty or the commitment of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. But then, other than that, I feel like as long as the person appointing is still someone contesting for the run, we are going to always have that loophole in which that challenge is always going to arise, whereby the person they are going to put as the chairperson will always have that bias.
Well, thank you so much, Cinderella. Of course, I will bring Ronald back to the conversation. Ronald, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Ronald, I would like us to talk about the citizen participation, civic awareness, and the voter trust. You know, an election cycle is incomplete without, the citizens, without their trust, but also without the civic awareness and voter education, they will not be able to vote. We know that the Human Rights Commission, alongside the Electoral Commission, are responsible for doing voter education, but also civic education. And with an influx of 5 million youth in these upcoming elections, who we know will suffer from a lack of voter education, what are some of the key reasons Ugandans, especially in rural areas, may feel like elections are already decided before the polling day? Many people have that belief, and I think you also expressed it because of the interference and the monetization of politics. So why do you think that people feel that the results of the polls are already decided before election day in Uganda?
Oh, thank you so much. You see, it is not something new. People say history does not repeat itself. But in Uganda, we always see that it is the reverse of it. History repeats itself. So even in a scientific laboratory, when you conduct a test 2 times, and again for the 3rd time, the same result comes again, that is a confirmatory result. So the act of citizens losing hope that already the results of a particular election is already predetermined is something obvious, because it is not the first time Uganda is holding elections. Okay, I'm a born of the current regime, and I have witnessed as a citizen many elections in Uganda, starting with the 2000 referendum. Now, on the issue of civic education, let me start from the issue of civic education. Part of the population, you may find that has
Onizimai, we've lost you a little bit. Can you move a little so that you can stabilize your network? We've lost you. We cannot hear you. Ronald, can you hear me? Onizimai, can you hear me? Cinderella, are you on? Can you hear me? Cinderella, hello?
Hello.
Yes, since Onizimai went off, I wanted us to dive into another part of the conversation, if you don't mind, because
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll join, and then we can start from there.
It's okay.
Yes, I want us to talk about inclusion, especially in terms of the youth. And, over the years, we've had more quotas created in order to offer positions for young people and for women, and yet many issues that are important for inclusion of different marginalized communities, not just youth and women, but all marginalized groups under the Equal Opportunities Commission or under the Constitution gazetted. What do you think how can women and youth leverage, how can they negotiate for better policies and better inclusion during election seasons such as this, in order to have more positions in politics, but also to have more policies passed on their side?
Okay, I believe that with time, as time has gone on in our political scene, we have been seeing positions being opened and availed to more diverse groups. We have had the elderly, we have had the youth, disabilities, and all this. The only challenge we are facing is many of the times when it comes to actual elections, we do not take or keep in mind the fact that the people we are putting into these positions have to have their responsibilities at heart. They have to have what has taken them there at the forefront. We shall have a youth MP entering parliament and does nothing for the youth. And they're going to focus on bringing about bills and changes that have to do with situations that but ignoring their responsibilities. We have had positions for ministers of disability, but we rarely hear about anything they are doing or changes they are bringing about, not because many of them are not equipped, but they find themselves in positions where they lose focus. Many of the times they lose focus on what has brought them there. They find themselves focusing on only those that have been brought to the bills that have been brought to Parliament and which have been availed to them to be passed. We also find a situation where, when it comes to elections in themselves, we have a lot of corruption and bias when it comes to appointment or voting for certain situations. We have seen many parliamentary positions into generational heirlooms. We are having your grandmother was the MP, your mother was the MP, now you are running in the same position. So many a times this becomes more a source of income than it is a political value to the people. So many of them lose their focus. The third point is we also have the fact that many of the people we are putting in these positions are also struggling. So they're not going to reach there and they are giving you a check that big and your focus is what brought you. You're going to lose focus, of course, because I'm not going to say it in a negative way, but I do believe that we're at a point where the money has started speaking for them. We have put a parliament in a position where the money is doing all the controlling. Even if someone has an agenda, the moment a fee or the moment they see that there is money to be made, the direction completely changes. Even we have situations where people go determined, they get there and we don't know what happens to the determination. And also, I feel when it comes to the process, I do believe that we need a lot more sensitization and raising awareness in communities, both rural and urban, because we even have educated people who are not very sure about what it means to vote, what it means to be a member of parliament. We even have people in parliament who don't know what their responsibilities are, they don't know what powers they hold as members of parliament. They don't know what they can and cannot do. They just know that they get paid and they leave. So we find ourselves in a situation where people are not really doing much for their communities. And also we have the fact that many of the times we are putting people in power whereby the communities they are to serve, they are not members of. You have a member of parliament of somewhere like Karamoja, and he or she grew up abroad, came back, has not really lived there. You have an MP of like a very deep village like in Isinjiro, same thing. So that is not someone whose priority is going to be the area in which they have been put to represent.
Thank you so much, Cinderella, and for that submission. I will get back to you on our next round of questions. Onizimai, you were still submitting when you got off the call. Can you take it from there?
Oh, sorry, I had that network breakage, but I was at the point of saying civic education does not reach to the deepest rural parts of the country where it deserves to reach. Actually, that is where it is much needed than where civic educators tend to concentrate. Madam, I would like to take us back to the civic education done in 2000 for the referendum that was conducted. During the civic education, instead of the civic educators doing civic education on what exactly referendum is and the meaning of existence of multipartyism in the country, people were campaigning in favor of movementism. So the ideal content of civic education was distorted at that time. So citizens got wrong information other than the information, the ideal information they were supposed to get. So what is the content of civic education and how it has been done consistently every after 5 years matters a lot. There has been no consistency, and you find in the last minute that the Electoral Commission coming out to apologize to Ugandans because of time factor, that we didn't have enough time to do ABCD. They end up going on radios to conduct the civic education, and not every Ugandan actually has a radio. If Ugandans can fail to even afford their 2 meals per day in a day, how can they afford a radio? And you go to conduct the civic education on a radio, which not all Ugandans have. You see, we do things that do not suit, every population matters. An individual is a fraction of the entire population. Without that individual, then you cannot say that that is the actual population of that country. Meaning, if you eliminate, not directly, but out of circumstance, because of poverty, that you go on radio and conduct civic education on a radio, and not every population gets what you have actually done or spoken about on the radio, you have exempted a lot, and many would miss. Trust me, there are people who do not know how the elections are supposed to be conducted. There are people who do not know their rights, even when it comes to the time of elections. So, civic education does not meet the coverage it deserves to meet in Uganda. So, looking at the second question, I beg you to remind me of it. The second question. Hello? Are you getting me?
Yes, I can hear you. Give me a moment. I kept listening to you and got a bit sidetracked. So I think the second question was not just on civic education, but also on citizen participation and voter trust towards the process, and how it can be boosted.
Thank you so much. Actually, you have reminded me where I exactly stopped on the other point. I said that the voter trust in Ugandan citizens, it's not an easy thing to restore. It's just like healing after trauma. I was saying that something, for example, even if you're in a scientific laboratory, you have conducted a test 2 times, and for the 3rd time, the same result comes. That is a confirmatory test. So, whatever the situation, the results to such tests are taken as final. Now, that is where the situation, that is where the minds of the citizens are. This thing has been recurring. It has been recurrent. Now, in 2016, you see, a free and fair election, when there is a free and fair election that citizens can trust, you would have less or limited demonstrations and protests to vote results. Now, in 2016, results were protested. Free My Vote campaign was intense, and police had to sweat, in a mouse and cat chase to stop Ugandans from protesting against the results. In 2021, the same case. Even before that, the same case. So those are many years of same tests, and the results still come. Nevertheless, Ugandans can't lose hope, but restoring the trust in the Ugandans is not a one-day thing. It's like healing after a trauma. It takes time, but they have never lost hope, but the doubt remains. The person who spearheads the entire process is being appointed by another incumbent, a participant. I would call a participant. So how would you declare results against someone who puts food on your table? Tomorrow you will not eat. Then this is something that Ugandans are very much aware of. So their trust can never be restored unless, even if we take the appointment process to the parliament, still it would be jeopardized. Reason being, people are being bought to have a bigger representation in the parliament. So if we still give, even if we give the parliament the power to get this person to, unless we give it, I don't know, in the hands of God, because I don't see it, because in the parliament, arguments will come. You see, sometimes democracy defeats facts. Then they say, okay, opposition and the ruling government, let us go into voting. And then the majority would be called at for a certain caucus, then the result must be uniform. Then again, the person, even if you don't want this person remain as the chairperson. No hope, no hope, no trust. The same result would come. Well, even if you use elimination method, substitution, or whatever, the results are the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that submission. And now on the call, of course, on the call now we have Richard. Richard, thank you for joining us. Richard Alemi is one of the students who is from Nkumba University as well. Richard, before you joined the call, we talked about the history and the legal analysis of the elections, contrasting 1961 and the recently concluded elections. Then we also talked about the institutional watchdogs, which is the Electoral Commission, the ones in charge of organizing elections. And right now, as you joined us, we're talking about civic engagement and citizen participation. But also, before Onizimai, he had dropped off a little bit. Before he came back to the call, we had talked about marginalized communities like youth and women. So Richard, if you can hear me now, can I present my question to you? Okay, okay, fine. So my question is around the 1980, I mean, the Constituent Assembly elections, the ones that the participants of, the results of which brought us participants that debated our constitution of today. And many people say that the Constituent Assembly elections were free and fair. What is your take? Do you think that the elections were inclusive enough for all Ugandans? Richard, please come in. Richard, you have not yet unmuted.
Am I audible enough now?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to say sorry for the delays. There's been issues of network. And to your question, you know, when you talk about the Constituent Assembly, you have to appreciate the fact that these are people who have the legal brains to draft something, not only to benefit them, but to benefit the citizens at large. And then, if they're drafting this constitution, what do they take into account? You know, it's not like a hearsay where somebody comes and say, let's do this, let's do that. No, they first do what is called a research. I believe in your schools, when you're given something, you're given a period of time to go and do what is called a research, right? So when you do the research, you come back and give the feedback of what you believe could be the best option to mitigate a certain problem, if at all it is given. So it is similar to what they're doing. They don't just go about and do it, but they first find out what are the best things that people need, that if they come on board and put it in the constitution, it does not only benefit a certain group of people, it will encourage everybody. Now, let's look at the previous constitutions, what have been happening. We see that there are a lot of marginalized groups of people that were not being looked upon. We see that the constitution only bases its article on a certain class of people that mostly benefit from it. We talk about the marginalized groups are left out, talk about the women that are left out, and therefore they are victims of a lot of nemesis. But when the Constituent Assembly in the year 1990, when they drafted the 1994 Constitution, what happened? The 1995 Constitution, what happened? They put into accord the cries of what the other groups of people that are marginalized. For example, the women. That's why we have Article 31 that provides for the marginalized groups of people. Who gave it? It is them. What we have Article 1, which talks about the interpretation of the Constitution, so that a person who does not understand the writings of the Constitution can come to Article 1 and read what it is trying to bring on board. That's why we have Article 3, which protects the Constitution itself, even if a new government comes on board. These articles were lacking in the previous constitutions that has brought in a wrangle in regards to the overturn of the governments. That's why today we see that women have been given the rights to move to school. Women are given rights to own property. Women are given rights to do things that men were doing before, that they were not given the opportunity to do. Talk about things to do with elections, talk about things to do with participating in politics. Today we have women in the political reign, not because they want to, but because it is the mandate that the constitution provided. They should be given the opportunity to participate, because they have been they have been deprived of these opportunities in the previous in the previous constitutions. So all this center across the Constitutional Assembly that came on board to look upon this and made sure that these kind of people that are marginalized are placed in. Let's talk about affirmative action. You know, in Karamoja region, to give an example, Karamoja region is one of the regions that the government looks upon in determining the results of the country. Why? It is because they believe that school is a waste of time. For them, they believe that they want to use cattle as a way of earning living. But the government comes on board to say, no, women should be given opportunity to go to school. You can't stop a woman just because of your own believe that they are not supposed to. So that's why they come on board and what brought in, and they gave the 1.5 affirmative action for women, that if they're joining campus, they're supposed to give that guarantee to ensure that they encourage more women to come to school. And at the end of the day, they achieve their goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I want to ask a follow-up question, of course. And I talked about the elections that brought that assembly. Would you say that election was free and fair? And just to give context, it was an election that had primarily people from the NRA group, the Bush War heroes, and some of their comrades. But then many people say that people from other parts of the nation were not represented, but also they say it set a precedent for how elections continued to be in Uganda, especially now, years later, and still primary elections in different political parties, people still line up. It's the same format of activity that happened back in the day. So would you say that it set a precedent for how elections take place? And if so, this constitution of the 1995, do you believe that it has given us free and fair elections? Because that is a document that they produced. So would you, in line of election, what do you say?
Okay, if you talk about the line of elections, I will partially not say fully they have achieved what they're actually supposed to do. Yes, because if you're in this country, you will know what has been happening, and that reflects back to the errors that they made. Now, me as an individual, I will say it is true that what they are sitting as the Constitutional Assembly has ushered into an era of elections, or they have given a strategy of how elections are to be conducted and all those. Yes, but their elections, you see, it becomes so hard to me as an individual if at all I take advantage of what I've done and then I say I want to use it over others. That doesn't make sense, right? But then if I say because I've done something, I need to bring in other people to hear on their opinion of what I've done, then makes it a conclusive argument that at the end of the day, even those who never participated in what you did can have their voices heard. Now, why am I bringing this on board? Let's look at the Constitutional Assembly itself. It was consisting of mostly how they call it the war heroes. Those who fought in the bush. That's why they came on board to bring up that assembly on the virtue of on the basics that they are the war heroes. But to me, as a person, if you're to ask me as an individual, I would say the chronology that is used to bring in those people into those into that aspect is not real fair, because the criteria itself is not really, to me, it's not really fair, because you can't exonerate other people and you bring just people who fought the war, not putting in accord that there are others out there who can bring in better strategies that can help develop the country at large. So if we base our argument on that, and then me as a person, I want to agree fully with the fairness in terms of electing the Constituent Assembly that formulated the 1995 Constitution. And then I beg your pardon on the next question, please. On the other question asked me apart from the fair elections.
I asked about I think you answered the question, because I was asking about how the elections were delivered under the 1995 Constitution, if they were credible. And I believe that you answered that question. And now I am going to begin my last round of questions. Our time is fast spent. And of course, I will start with Kkama, Cinderella. And I want you guys to tell us about which policies we can include to make elections better in Uganda. And you can give us your contribution on that. and then give us a closing statement. We'll start with Kkama, Cinderella, then we'll go to Onizimai, Ronald, and then we'll come back to you, Richard.
I think majority of the necessities that are required are all limited to one thing. We need more independence to be accrued to the Electoral Commission, especially when it comes to the appointment of the chairperson Electoral Commission. We need to limit the participation of the executive in the election of the chairperson. Also, we need to include the civic education or raising awareness in more activities than just raising it towards the elections. It should be something that is part and parcel of our education system, part and parcel of our community learning. It should be something that everyone knows at the back of their head, just like speaking. That way we can make sure that everyone is an active participant when it comes to elections. We can make sure that everyone is more knowledgeable about the decision they make and the impact which the vote they take has on their communities. And that is submission for today. Kkama.
Thank you, Cinderella. Now let's invite Onizimai Ronald to give his submission and his closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Caroline. For Uganda to have free and fair and credible election, I'm looking at these 4 key areas. 1, we should have clear policies that would set boundaries for the participation of the military in the electoral process. If they are to guard candidates or protect votes, let that be their boundaries. So we should have clear boundaries regulating the involvement of the military in the electoral process, because they have surpassed what they are supposed to do. 2, this might be a little bit hard, but there should be a criteria that should be employed to regulate the amount of money that would be injected into any political process. Right now, okay, we are in a multi-party. Right now, we are in a multi-party system of democracy, but what are the objectives of all these political parties now we are trying to register? Others, sincerely, when we look at them, others, not even others, but we don't need excess of that, because people register for political parties, they want to access money. You see, now politics have become an avenue of getting money, even registering political parties. So we should regulate the springing of these political parties. 3, the use of money should be regulated. It is hard because for us in Uganda, you know, it is very tricky. Money comes to Bank of Uganda, yes, and it largely reaches out to the rest of the population through individual accounts. That is how populations now access this money. You want money, you join this other political party, and then you'll get the money. That's how money enters into the population, and that is how money spoils the electoral processes in Uganda. So there should be mechanisms to regulate money usage, to bribe voters, to bribe electoral personnel. All those human resources being used to run the electoral processes should be well checked and well verified and endorsed by the parliament, with less arguments or with less disagreements on from the opposition wing or from the government wing, not merely someone or a few group of people standing up and saying that by the powers vested in me, I appoint so and so as the Electoral Commission. 3, lastly, much as our constitution has merely become a piece of paper that we can tear the page at any time and edit certain things and fix, we should go on to at least reduce the powers of the president, and we remove him from appointing the chairperson electoral commission if the constitution guarantees so. He should not be the one, because we don't have time limits. We have stripped off Ugandan constitution of that provision. No more time limits. So it would have been justifiable if the person who will never contest again appoint the chairperson of electoral commission, but we have incumbents appointing chairpersons of electoral commissions, and the same things follow the line, you know. So we should work on the part of the constitution that gives powers to the president, because the presidents have endless time, like endless time in Uganda. So that part should be amended so that powers are given to the parliament, because in the parliament, where it is only in the parliament, at least, even if not effected, that scrutinization takes place there, at least people feel guilty. They know that we have wrapped the constitution here. We have gone against the constitution here. Much as they would be doing it, but they would be doing it with the same.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for all that contribution and for joining us on the Inter-University show. And now to invite our last speaker, Richard Yangu Alemi. Please come and give us what you think should be done, and of course your concluding statements.
Thank you very much. To begin with, civic education. Civic education is one of the important tools that can be used to pass in message to people. Now, if I remember very well, the last time civic education was taught in Uganda was 20 years ago, when I was still in national. Till now, we didn't have anything to do with civic education. People are left at a point of a dilemma. People are running up and down to know what basic elections are. So if we don't bring civic education back, trust me, even if we beat our heads thick and thin, we shall not achieve what we need. So these kind of platforms that makes people to be aware about their rights, about what elections are about, could be the best option to pass messages out to people on what they need to do if we want to achieve a free and fair elections. Now, the next thing that I can bring on board is the limitations of the executives. I think my co-presenter just talked about it. This thing of saying that with the powers vested, I appoint you as being the electoral commission. It's as if you're going to appoint somebody whom at the end of the day, you believe that when things comes to us, will favor you and will defend you where needed. So if you bring such kind of strategies and you bring it into a country like Uganda, then what's the end result? There will be no free and fair elections, because at the end of the day, I appoint you because I know you're going to benefit me. So if we remove that mentality of what appointing people, but rather we make a group of people to vote who should spearhead these elections, it becomes a better way that at the end of the day, people will bring somebody who they believe will be neutral to both parties. We've ever heard of wrangles happening where the opposition leaders have been beaten, yet the ruling government goes and does its election successfully. I've gone to Koboko, has been Narua, and you see everything is peaceful. But if the opposition leaders go, you find a lot of wrangles. I did hear one of the doctors of Nkumba University did mention a statement that opposition leaders have been tortured, yet the ruling government continues to do its campaigns freely and fairly. Why? It is because at the end of the day, people are not being aware about what their rights are. So if we aware people about their rights, trust me, people will know what to do and how they should go about with it. Now, the other thing that I'm supposed to be talking about is democracy. Uganda, we have what is called democracy. But to be honest, democracy has been taken as a business. People have been paid off to come to the majority. So when you pay people off to come to the majority, then that means democracy ceases to have its meaning. Uganda, a graduate from Harvard University, stated that if you take democracy as a business, then we leave out what is called self-esteem, which therefore results us not have self-consciousness on the kind of leaders that we need to bring on board to change the country. So let these elections be all about self-consciousness. Citizens will have their self-consciousness that who is the kind of a person that I'm sending to be my leader? Is it the kind of person that at the end of the day will just look at me as an individual or look at the development of the particular country? So if we send people that look at the development of a particular country, not only necessarily a group of people, then that means you have acted consciously in terms of your elections. But if you send somebody just because the person has given you some money, has bought you off to be the majority, then there, trust me, you are sending somebody who will go and lead, but will not lead to the expectation of the people. Then what happens then? You hear that people are complaining that so-and-so is not doing work. Why? It is because democracy is being taken as a business, but it has lost its essence. So self-consciousness will be the first thing that people should adopt. Lastly, to the people, elections are coming, but then the most important thing is, what kind of leader are you electing? Is it that kind of a leader that you believe that because he's giving you money, you should send him, or it should be that leader that when you send him, he should bring development, not only to you, but to the entire nation? Those are the kind of leaders that we need. Above all, let's act and let's do the needful as far as the Constitution has concerned and has given us. Thank you very much. I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm glad that you were able to make it on time, and we are honored that we had the opportunity to have your submission. Ladies and gentlemen, those were the submissions of students from Nkumba University, and they have strong opinions on what should happen in the coming elections, but also on reforms that should happen in order to ensure that we have credible, free and fair elections. On the call, we had Yangu, Richard, Alemi, we had Kkama, Cinderella, and Onizimai, Ronald. Thank you so much for participating, but also for people who followed the conversation until the end. Thank you so much. Let the conversation continue online and everywhere else. My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. Thank you so much for joining the call, and have a good day.
Thank you.